Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tracy Laliberty, and I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare. And it is my pleasure to be able to welcome everybody to the Zoom presentation today on behalf of our center, on behalf of our School of Social Work, and the University of Minnesota's College of Education and Human Development. Today's event is made possible through funds of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, which is managed through a contract with the Minnesota Department of Human Services Child Safety and Permanency Division. It's a wonderful partnership. This webinar is the last in a series of 5 webinars that we have put together focused on permanency and transition to adulthood for youth in the child welfare system. We typically have an in-person conference each spring. However, due to COVID-19, we were unable to gather that way this year. We are, however, fortunate to have the technology that allows us to come together in this virtual space. We want to acknowledge and start this webinar by acknowledging that our university and the land on which we are broadcasting this webinar in Minnesota is the unceded traditional and ancestral and contemporary land of the Dakota people, who are the first people of Minnesota Makoche. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm tribal sovereignty and work to hold the university, ourselves, and our partners accountable to American Indian peoples and nations. We also acknowledge slavery's deep roots and recognize the significant role that captive and free African Americans have played in building our country, the United States, today. At this point, I typically thank our outreach staff for their work over the past few months. It has been a lot of work and effort to be able to pull together this series. And while I do want to recognize all of their work, today is a day to recognize specifically our Director of Outreach, Karina Berry, as it is her last day at CASCW, and this is her last official event. Karina has been with CASCW for more than 5 years and has brought tremendous passion, knowledge, and skill to her work here. She provided leadership to our team and courageously explored new and innovative ways for CASCW to connect with child welfare professionals in Minnesota and across the country. We cannot express the depths of our gratitude to Karina for her dedication and contributions over these years. She will be missed incredibly, and we stand with her, excited to see what the next chapter brings. With that, I introduce Karina Berry, our Director of Outreach, to introduce our speaker, excuse me.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. Trying to make me cry this morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for tuning in morning, afternoon, and from all over the country. I'm just quickly going to share some logistics and just kind of process, and I'll let our presenters share more from there. If you could all just keep yourselves unmuted until noted otherwise. Please feel free to use the chat to offer comments, questions, and please, we want you to be engaged and offer anything that's on your mind. As well as I also wanted to let you know that I will be following up by email after the presentation with a copy of the CEUs, additional resources that come up during the presentation. And I will remind everyone at the end of the webinar of that as well. And we also will have the video recording of this presentation available on our YouTube channel, including the previous webinars. If you weren't able to tune in, those are all available now on our YouTube channel. And so I think that's it for now. And so at this time, I'd love to introduce our presenter for today, Kino Eval. And Kino, I will let you share more about yourself because there's just so much great things to say, and I can't steal your shine, but I'll let you share more.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here on a Wednesday morning from around the country as we talk about placemaking and transition. I'm Kino Eval. I'm a poet. I'm the founder and director of Black Table Arts, nonprofit organization in the Twin Cities that's been doing work for 6 years, gathering Black communities at the intersections of art, civic engagement, imagination, Black joy. And it's a thrill to be able to have a session with you all as we think about what role might the arts play, and how can we think about language, particularly in this American moment, particularly considering what's happening in the country, what's, even happened in Minneapolis, you know, earlier this year. And it's a joy to participate in this digital space. Um, yeah, quick background, but before we really dive into the session, I myself is a transracial adoptee. I got adopted when I was 5.5, born in Chicago, went back and forth in the foster care system from Hennepin County to Chicago. Have a lot of siblings. Me and my siblings got adopted into various households. We're all artists. I'm not sure how that happened. We um, we are now working artists doing various things in various fields. But the question of belonging, home, kinship, poetry, adoption, racial difference, um, seeded my curiosity early on. Um, and has been a theme through a thrill line throughout my life, as I sort of search for clarity on answers to how can programs get young folks to think about ways in which they build kinship, in the arts, in the classroom, outside of the classroom. So it's a joy to talk about these things. Um, and as we sort of get into the session, feel free to turn your cameras on if you would like to. Would love to see everybody's face in this digital world that we in. Would love to see y'all and check in with y'all and see how y'all doing. I know it's still early in some places, but hopefully this will be a space of imagination and of language. Um, yeah, I've been so to sort of get into the session. Um, what role does art and language play in providing spaces of belonging and atmospheres of kinship? Um, at Black Table Arts, uh, we go back to that idea that art keeps the imagination and the memory of a community alive. Um, that language is not only meaning making, but it builds relationship. It's kinship making, um, and this seems very important. Harvard professor Roberto Unger um, says of children and of education that each child is a tongue-tied prophet. That each child is a tongue-tied prophet. Harvard University, Roberto Unger. And we think at Black Table Arts that language and poetry particularly is a way to loosen the tongue, right? To give clarity and ideas, right? Um, in that if we provide spaces where we think about language, think about art, we're also providing spaces of imagination. Um, and really, as we sort of dive into this session, I would love if we could check in with each other, and get into smaller breakout groups for a little bit of time, and just think about this question, right? Um, who is someone who has prepared a place for you, particularly considering safety, right? Prepared a safe place for you. Who is someone who has prepared a place for you, right? And just think about that question. So if we could get into breakout groups, if we could say our names, you could say your pronouns if you would like to, and just reflect on that question. Who is someone who has prepared a place for you? Could go back to childhood, could be, but it could go back to 3 weeks, could be a coworker, could be a guardian, could be an artist who is someone who has prepared a place for you with care, right? Thinking about what that means. So if we could, I think there's 50 people here. So if we could get into breakout groups and just think about that question, name, pronouns if you would like to, and who is someone who has prepared a place for you? Just take some time to sit with that question.
Okay. I will, so just a couple minutes and I'll slowly get folks. And if you've never done this before, you'll be pulled into your room and then we'll call you all back too. So just be patient, please.
Whoever wants to go.
Everyone should slowly be pulled into their room. Okay, sorry, I just have to assign some. Hi, y'all in my group. Sorry, I'm also managing breakouts. Please feel free to take your cameras off. I totally understand if you're not comfortable taking your cameras off in our room. You can just have your audio. If folks are able to kind of, let me see, share. And then I'm also checking to make sure people are, no one's in a room where nobody's at. Can you all hear me in our room? Okay, here comes Jonathan. Hello.
Hey, I'm
Hi.
switching to my computer. Can you put me in breakout room 4 again?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Let me see. Sorry, I just have to find you on a list. Okay, move to breakout room. Oh, why did 4 disappear off of my, I think 4 got maxed out, so it won't let me put you in there.
Okay.
So weird. Sorry about that. I don't know why. I guess I've not had that issue before. Were you
I'm gonna
on?
leave on my other device and we'll see if that works.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Apologies. Sorry. Good old Zoom. Takes a second. Now I can't see your name on here. Okay, Jonathan, I'm sorry. I don't know why now it's not showing now that you closed your other device. Oh. Hello all, if you are just joining in our room, I'm sorry, I'm having to manage our breakout rooms. If you are willing to, until we go back to our full group, The question we're posed is, who is someone that has prepared a place for you, who has prepared safety for you in your life? And oh, Annika, I can see your message. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm getting messages that my internet is unstable. My son's on a school Zoom meeting, so I keep getting kicked out.
Okay, sorry. We'll keep letting you in if it keeps happening.
Okay.
And so I'll keep it, like, you'll keep showing up in the waiting room, so I can keep, you know, if you continue to get booted, but you want to keep trying to come back in, we'll make sure you still get in. So yeah, I was just double checking our group. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else feels like sharing. Who is someone that has prepared a safe place for you? I think if I think of that question, I think about my grandmothers. I grew up with two parents who really struggled with addiction and incarceration, both in and out of prison. And so I spent a lot of time between my grandmother's houses, and I was fortunate to have two grandmothers at different points who I was able to find home with. And so I think when I think of someone that has prepared a place for me, who's provided safety for me, I think of them. I also think of being when I was a teenager, I really struggled in school and getting in trouble because of everything that was happening at home. And oh, hi, are we wrapping up now? Oh, you're muted, sorry. And so I also think about like other professionals that maybe provided space for me. And I think of one teacher in high school that was like the only teacher that ever really provided a safe space in the classroom to like check in and really bring into the classroom like what was going on in our lives, and not just kind of I don't know, like if I was missing assignments, if I had an attitude, if I was getting into things, you know, like not just kind of cutting me out or, you know, sending me to the principal, getting me suspended. Like she created a space to just listen and try to understand what was going on, what we needed, how we could, helping us find ways to express what we were feeling, because I didn't have those tools at that point. So yeah. I don't know if others want to share.
Yeah, I guess this question was really hard for me because I don't feel like I can name one person. I was in Hennepin County foster care and later adopted, but I had abusive adopted parents. And I'm half white and Ojibwe, and I grew up not knowing that part of myself. And I just found that out later on, only a couple years ago, and I'm 34 now. I had no idea, and I kind of didn't really have anyone to turn to except for myself. But when I had my son at 22, who's autistic, and I raised him alone, that was kind of, you know, my one reason to keep pushing on. So, but other than that, I don't feel like I had an adult support system growing up or even in adulthood.
Thank you for sharing. Kino, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's
Pull people back.
let's bring people back.
Okay. Everyone should slowly get brought back into the main room.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all for sharing, checking in, people who have prepared a place for us. What does it mean to prepare a place in this moment as people come back? Sure. Cool. And does everyone have something to write with and write on? If we could just get out something to write with and write on, that would be fantastic. As we're thinking about language and placemaking. Cool. Cool. Awesome. Everyone, people are still getting that back in. So cool. So before we move on to the next thing, is there anyone who would like to just quickly share to the larger group, just maybe one or two people, who is someone who has prepared a place for us, and with care and intention, either in our professional lives or in our personal lives, particularly thinking about an overarching view of foster care, adoption. Who is someone who has prepared a place for us? Does anyone want to quickly just shout out someone real quick? Someone
I can go.
Awesome. Cool.
So our group talked about just like the differences of everything that's going on right now with the pandemic and everything. And there was only 3 people in our group, and we talked about Friendsgiving, because like just with everything going on, like just creating a space for friends that may not have some place else to go. Like I've never done Friendsgiving, but I'm hosting it this year. So and the other 2 people in my group had already done it before. So just thinking differently and outside the box about different ways to include people.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Anyone else want to share what they wrote, what they talked about in their groups? Anyone else want to shout someone out or share what they wrote real quick one time? It's all good. Cool. Yeah. Well, let's continue this conversation. If folks could get out something to write with and write on, that would be great. What I want you to think about, so when we think about language, it's a lot of, particularly with poetry. And if you're not a poet, don't get freaked out. We're not gonna, there's not gonna be a quiz, I promise. But we're gonna think a little bit about what are the words that we use to describe our work, particularly associated with young people, at our workplaces, in our lives. And what I want you to do, because we're thinking about, transitioning, foster care, adoption, what I want you to do is just write a list of words that immediately come to mind when you think about the ways in which young people are described, or even in your own experience. When I was a young person, people described me in this way, right? And just see what comes up. Young people at my work are described like this, or young people at, in my neighborhood, young people on the news, just what are the words that we use to describe young people these days? And just, see what comes up. And I might play some relaxing music, so we can just have it in the background. Take a few more moments. Awesome. Cool. And if we could just wrap up the thought or the feeling that we're currently on right now, that would be awesome. Just wrap up the sort of words that you're on right now. That would be great. Awesome. So there's a lot of people on this call, but I would love to sort of hear from a few folks. What are some words that come up for us when we think about the ways in which young people are being described right now at our workplaces, in our communities, in this 2020 year that we're in, or even how we were described as a young person. What are some words that come to mind? What are some languages that come to mind? Does anyone want to share? And feel free to just, and if we could say our names, and you could say your pronouns if you would like to, that'd be great. But just one or two people.
I would share. This is Rachel. So I think from my perspective, the community I'm living in, and even society, looks at our youth somewhat negatively from what I see. They seem to look at them as lazy, disrespectful, disobedient. And I don't see that. I see a bunch of youth that are super passionate and intelligent, and they're caring about the world and what's going on around them. They're really sensitive to it. And unfortunately, because they are so passionate about it, it's seen as disrespectful.
Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that. And feel free to populate the chat as well. Feel free to populate the chat with your thoughts and ideas. Does anyone else want to share out words that we are using to describe young people, or I should say words that we are seeing that are being used to describe young people in our communities, in our lives? Anyone else want to share out before we move on to the next thing? Anyone else want to?
I will go. Can you hear me? My name is Priscilla, and I just finished a research project with young homeless people. And we asked them to talk about themselves, and we asked their service providers to describe them. And they came out to be kind and courteous and giving. And I mean, giving when they didn't have a lot of resources. They talked about giving back and paying it forward. Not even like knowing the people that they were helping out, but they were doing it anyway, which was, we're looking at gratitude, generosity, and hope. And some of this information was very surprising.
Appreciate that. Absolutely. Anyone else want to share out what the chat looks great, and does anyone else want to share out quickly words that they use that they're seeing used to describe young people?
Go ahead and share. My name is Shannon Hubbard, and again, I work at the University of Alabama for Alabama Reach, and I work with foster and homeless youth. And so I hear a lot of people who are referring to the students in my program as disadvantaged or marginalized. And then once they get to know them, I hear that change. And then we're seeing more descriptive words like resilient and extraordinary, goal-driven, hardworking. And then also sometimes we hear that they're abusing the system, that they're just trying to get everything that they can get in order to be successful. And I think once they get to know my students, I see that that sense of negativity towards them change. And then we're seeing the more positive aspects being discussed.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Yeah, so, and this is especially interesting given the moment that we're in. We're in a George Floyd moment. We're in a Breonna Taylor moment. We're in a moment where we're in a moment of imagination, but we're also in a moment where the nation state is viewing young people in a particular way, particularly Black and brown young people who are on fire with passion, making sure that we hold systems of governance accountable, right? So language is incredibly important because, you know, system states use language to either justify their actions or to explain what's happening, you know? Do folks know the name Vincent Hardy? Vincent Harding is such an important name to know. Vincent Harding co-authored a lot of Martin Luther King's speeches, particularly the war against Vietnam. Vincent Harding is sort of whispering in the ear of Dr. King in 68, 67. I bring up that name because he had a lot to say to young people about imagination and vision and language, particularly poetry. So what I would love for us to do is listen to this clip I'm gonna play of Vincent Harding and just write down any language, any words that stick out, that resonate. And particularly considering November 3rd this year, and what can we learn from Vincent Harding? And I'm just gonna play the audio clip. I'm just gonna test it and see if you all could hear it okay. Let's see if it's gonna start in a few moments here. Vincent Harding speaking to young people. Starts out.
I am a citizen of a country that does not yet exist. That's who I see you all as being, especially you younger folks, but not confined to you younger folks. We are citizens of a country that we still have to create. A just country, a compassionate country, a forgiving country, a multiracial, multireligious country, a joyful country that cares about its children and about its elders, that cares about itself and about the world, that cares about what the earth needs, as well as what individual people need. You are a citizen of a country that does not yet exist and that badly needs to exist. That's connected, you see, to Langston Hughes, the poet again. America, you've never been America to me, he said. And we can always stop there and complain and complain and complain. You've never been America to me. But remember, Langston did not stop there. America, you've never been America to me. But I swear this oath, you will be. I want you, those who are not afraid to swear oaths, to swear that oath for yourself, for your children, and for your old uncle here. You will be America. You will be what you could be. You will be what you should be. And I am going to give my life to the working for that.
Vincent Hardy. Vincent Hardy. It's, you know, it's a beautiful thing to soak in. And let's just sit with the language that we just heard from Vincent Harding speaking to young people. And I can include a clip of that in like a follow-up, so you all can return to it in your work. But yeah, let's just have a large group discussion. Vincent Harding speaking to young people. I am a citizen of a country that does not yet exist. What are some things that stuck out, some words, some phrases, even the way he spoke, right? Even the way he spoke. Well, what are some things that just stuck out, you know? Feel free to just, anyone wanna just share out quickly?
I can pop in. Yeah, hi, I'm Alex. Pronouns are she, her. Yeah, that was gorgeous. Thank you for sharing that. I really, yeah, I felt a lot of like tingling in my body and like, yeah, just a lot of stuff got stirred in that. And I think what felt really powerful is, I mean, hearing the words joyful, hearing the words care about self, worlds, the earth, like that was so nourishing to hear those words. And I love the like the truth telling in it, the naming of the harms within it, the naming of the violence within it, but then the like insistence and the hopefulness and the dedication for something better that we have to create, that has to be made, that's like not here. And like just owning that, dude, it's not here. It is not here, but it will be here. And like the commitment and dedication to like, I'm part of making it become here. It's a call to action, I think, and really hopeful and really moving. Thank you.
Absolutely appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else want to?
Hi, this is Kim. So to me, you know, it was very beautiful, very hopeful, but also very sad knowing that how long ago was that said, and we can say those exact words right now, and it's still, we're in the same place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Very much felt like a roller coaster, Crystal here. Like it started up as all of these like compassion and forgiveness and caring. And then you take like this dip down to like, this doesn't exist and you've never been America to me. And just like recognizing the hurt and pain. And then it brings it back up like, we're not going to stay there. We're still fighting for this change. So also lots of tingly feelings in my body, Alex, right on.
Mm-hmm. Vincent Hardy, absolutely. Anyone else? Anyone else want to uplift the voices of Black folks in the space? Any Black folks or Black women have any comments? Any, just say thoughts, things that stuck out, things that resonated, even if it's just a word or something it reminded you of. So good. Feel free to populate the chat as well. Even the thoughts, cool. Yeah, Vincent Harding gets us to think about a lot, you know. Vincent Harding gets us to think about a lot. Yeah, what I would love for us to do is sort of continue this a bit. And if we could think of, you know, write down, let's try to get 5 words that describes to us what's at stake, you know, in our work, after November, thinking about what Vincent Harding said. What are words, sentences, short phrases that describe what's at stake? Maybe for you, it's the relationship you have with someone. Maybe for you, it's something as large as the earth. You know, maybe for you, it's a cohort of young people that you see regularly in their futures. What are some words that you can think about that describe what's at stake in your workplace or in your personal life? Thinking about what we've been talking Take a few more moments. A few more moments. Cool. So if we could wrap up the thought that we're on currently. Appreciate people populating the chat. We just got done listening to Vincent Hardy speaking about I am a citizen of a country that does not yet exist. And then and we're thinking about what's at stake, right? And Vincent used words like compassionate and care, right? And thinking about how do these words enter systems, you know, particularly when we think about history and state governance, right? Is neoliberalism the most caring mode of making contact with the general population? Thinking about is fascism the most caring mode of governance? It is not, right? So we're thinking about what are other ways in which we can be in community. What are the other ways in which we can imagine a just country? What does that particularly mean to this moment? You know, November 3rd is right around the corner. So is the trial of Derek Chauvin, right? So thinking about what are the ways in which we're keeping track of how we're thinking about how does compassion enter the ways in which governing accountability happens. And these are questions that take a lot of organizing. You know, these are questions that take a lot of organizing. Vincent Hardy was an organizer, right? Organizing keeps the imagination of a country alive, right? It's because of organizing we can, you know, Vincent can say what he said, right? Or, you know, organizing in art, I think, in our Black Civil Arts, we think reminds us of what we can be, right? So we're thinking about what's at stake. What's at stake for us? And I would love if everyone could talk to each other. So let's do another breakout and just take like 5 minutes to just try to hear what everyone is saying in your group. What's at stake, you know, for you in your own professional or personal life? Just take around 5 minutes, yeah.
Hello, is this our room? I couldn't tell if it's still pulling people. I think this is our
I wasn't sure either, so.
It looks like everyone's assigned. But hi everyone. Does anyone want to start? And we are, I was distracted getting the rooms ready. We are talking about what's at stake, kind of what we were reflecting on around that question. Does that sound right to folks?
I would say, yeah. For me, I'm coming in as not as a guardian ad litem. I'm coming in as a mom. I would be concerned for my kids, for their future, and how they look at our country and how they should treat other people. And I think that's pretty important, especially with everything you're seeing nowadays. And I have teenagers, and so I want them to get the right message, not only for myself, but from all of our leaders and our teachers and our politicians and everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Other folks that are here, feel free to chime in too. You don't have to turn on your camera, but if you want to share anything by audio, I can share. My name is Karina. I can share that my reflections on what was at stake, I immediately thought of lives and livelihood. I thought of Black lives and brown lives. I thought of Walter Wallace Jr., who was killed by police last night. And I think of our relatives who are living in encampments outside right now all over the country. And so I thought of livelihood, I think, first. But then I also thought like our voices are at stake as we approach an election, and democracy and everything about that, and how voices can be silenced and left out, disenfranchised, and how that couldn't get worse or improve, or, can be a mixed bag. So that's kind of what I thought about. Is anyone else willing to share kind of what reflections, what thoughts came to you?
I agree so wholeheartedly just on making sure that we have a voice and that we use it and that it's heard. That's quite frightening.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I thought of two, I was a youth worker before I was a social worker, working with youth in foster care, and before having like teenage nieces and nephews. And but I also thought of, I don't know if anyone here was able to attend last week. We had a webinar, I think that was last week already, with youth from the My Voice, Minnesota My Voice through Ampersand. And so they're youth who have experienced foster care, who are currently in foster care, youth who have aged out of foster care. And they just had they did a wonderful webinar, just kind of sharing their experiences in the system, but also like how this My Voice is empowering them to use their voice and to use their experience and to use their knowledge and their wisdom. And I just kept thinking and wanting to message to them. And I did, like, you all are power, like your voices are power. And I think of the Vincent Hardy speech that we were listening to, and the message he's giving around empowerment and power that already is inherent in young people. And just like how we have to do so much more work to remind youth, to instill that, to let them know that there is so much power in just who they are and what they know and what they feel and what is important to them. And so I think
I did attend that one, and I was just so impressed by their stories and how they were able to articulate their feelings. There's a lot of adults that can't speak that eloquently.
Yeah, absolutely. We can learn a lot from them. And yeah, and if anyone didn't, and you're like, what are they talking about? The video recording from that webinar is on the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare YouTube channel. I totally think it's worth revisiting and also just learning more about My Voice. Minnesota, if you have youth you work with, or in your own lives, your own young people that may find that program and space they're creating helpful. But yeah, if anyone else wants to share, feel free to, no pressure either way. If anyone feels moved, feel free to chime in at any point, but I know we will go back to our large group soon too. So totally okay just to sit and reflect.
Cool. So we're bringing it back here. All right, y'all. Any quick share outs before we move on? Any quick share outs? What's at stake? November 3rd is around the corner. COVID is still with us. So are our imaginations, so is our joy, so are our relations. What is at stake? Is there anyone who would like to share out what came up in their group or just their own thoughts? What is at stake for us? What is some language that we could use to describe what's at stake? Whoever wants to. Whoever wants to jump in. I know y'all had some good conversations. Some good ideas came up.
Should I raise my hand? Okay. So I shared that my health, my freedom, and my decision about being free and what that looks like. Someone else, I think it was Liz, said safety, and I really resonate with that. And again, you know, just decisions. What kind of decisions I make. I have friends who are saying, if a certain person, when I'm moving out of the country, am I willing to, am I ready to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and how, you know, how active do I want to be, or at my stage, being an elder, do I sit back and let other people who have more energy and who certainly have some opinions about what's going on, do I let them do it?
Mm-hmm.
Just encourage.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying. I was just saying in the other group, a book that I think gets at what you're saying, and I think that would serve us in this moment. And it thinks about how do we protect democracy, right? And it's a book by Yale professor Jason Stanley, and it's called How Fascism Works: The Politics of Us and Them. And what he gets at is that, well, he's trying to say, you know, how do we protect democratic projects and democracy? And he says through education. We need education, you know. That is a safeguard against myths that just aren't true, you know. Make America great again, right? To always keep our eye on the ball of what Vincent Hardy was talking about, a just country, a compassionate country, right? Education is a key factor in that, right? Because you know when someone's lying to you, you know. And, you know, I just want to affirm you all for showing up today. This is how we protect democracy, right? We gather, you know, and we talk about things and we decide things, right? I'm reading a book right now that's really great that I would recommend by Mark Nowak, Social Poetics. What does he say in Social Poetics? He says that in his work in South Africa, working with labor unions, a lot of his workshops got canceled because they didn't want their workers talking to each other, right? They didn't want them talking to each other because that's how powerful language is. It not only there's this lovely phrase about individual stanzas articulating collective grievances or something like that. This idea that we make meaning through language, but also we agree with each other, right? We don't like the way we're being treated. We don't like, we come to a consensus that, you know, we can change things. And this is very powerful, you know, and it lets in the potential of actually changing things, right? And language is the ground to which we do that. So appreciate all these thoughts that we're thinking about. Are there any other share outs? What's at stake? What's at stake? Is there anyone else who wants to share their thoughts that they had in their groups? What's at stake in this moment?
I think what could be at stake is, well, for me in the beginning with all this politics and voting, I didn't even want to vote. And I've been voting for 30 some years. Like you know, since I was 18. So I've always voted. I've always felt, you know, not really excited because you always got to vote for the best of the two evils. But this year I really didn't even want to vote. And it's terrible. It's very terrible. But, you know, I'm going to vote because it's what needs to be done. And it's necessary, I feel. But this whole election year to me just really, I don't know, it just turned me completely off. And I didn't want to vote, but I am. So I think that was a barrier for me.
Absolutely. Appreciate you saying that. Absolutely. And you know, I spend a lot of time thinking about the effectiveness of voting, and I think that the I absolutely think that people should vote. I also think that I am very worried that we will fall into the pitfall of making voting synonymous with having an organizing plan, a plan to organize, right? So Vincent Harding was speaking about organizing. And I think I absolutely, whatever, like vote for Joe Biden. I think people should vote for Joe Biden. I'm not saying that, but also saying that Joe Biden needs a mass movement, or he's not going to be enthusiastic about what Vincent Harding is talking about, you know. Um, and we need, yeah, and you know, I even think about the city I'm located in. I think that we absolutely need a movement on the ground to remind people that we care about George. You know, we care about Breonna. We still remember Terrence Franklin. We still remember Philando. These
Right.
all of these issues require people on the ground. And if you're not able to be on the ground, just, you know, uplifting the young people, you know. So I say all that to affirm what you're saying. I think it's exactly right. I think it's exactly right.
I mean, I think this election is one of the most important elections for sure.
Yeah.
It's just that I just feel like it just, you know, being around, which probably a lot of people have been around for many, many elections. And I don't know, it's very frustrating to me. It's very disencouraging. I think this election is going to really affect a lot of people, whichever way it goes, you know. I don't know, it just kind of sad to me that we are at this point in our life in 2020, that this is the way our world is, especially when it comes to human beings and politics. And like, we should be so above this and far beyond, but we're not. And, you know, this election to me surely shows that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
how selfish America is. I don't know. I don't know. I could go on. I hate talking about politics, so I'm going to just kind of stop there. But just so you know, I am going to vote because I know it's important. But this election was very, very difficult for me. Like, well, it wasn't difficult for me to figure out who I was going to vote for. It was just difficult for me to sit back and watch and just see all the ignorance and just the stupidity behind this one. So I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I wish I had time to play this interview of Sonia Sanchez. Do folks know the name Sonia Sanchez? Black
Yeah, I know her.
for sure. Black, a cornerstone really in the Black arts movement, poet, Black woman. You know, she speaks a lot about her decades of on the ground activism. And she says, you know, we thought it was going to happen in the 60s. And then we thought it was going to happen in the 70s. And then we thought it was going to happen, you know, and it really gets us to think about, how do you sustain your enthusiasm for organizing, for activities that suggest that we can change stuff. And it's funny, in that same interview, she says, I write a haiku every morning. She's in love with haiku, you know, so every day she writes a haiku. And I think a lot about what's the goal, you know, what's the point, you know. And I think it's a lot. It really does have to do with the activities that are available to us if we keep certain sensibilities alive, you know. And I think one of those sensibilities are our imagination, our friendships, our you know, these things that are available if you remind yourself of, you know, why you like writing haikus, or, you know, doing your, you know, whatever you do, you know, to take care of yourself. I say all that to say self-care is important, because this work is heavy if you're doing it over decades, for sure. So yeah,
I would like to keynote one thing. One thing you said that struck me is effort to keep people apart in the labor movement.
Yeah.
That happened in the 1930s in the United States as well, to keep Black laborers and white laborers and everyone apart. It was very effective, and racism was used as a wedge. But one thing about voting is that it is language and it is voice. And we also know that that voice, some of that voice is being suppressed right now. That's the same kind of behavioral wedge work that's kept people apart for generations that really should be on the same page. Their experience is certainly different in terms of the racism in this country, but economic interests are a parallel in many ways. But one thing I feel, in spite of all this craziness that's going on in this country right now, I still feel hopeful. I'm calling in from Austin, Texas, but I'm a Minnesotan by history, or North Dakotan originally. But I am very aware that people are still out there doing very, very good things, using their intelligence and their skills. And it's not all hopeless. I had a extremely bad accident in September, and I am very, very grateful that people are working in hospitals and emergency rooms, and they know what they're doing. And I think ultimately the American people all across this country know what they're doing. And that will, whatever happens next week, I really believe that at the foundation, that people know what they're doing. They know what's going on and have the strength and capacity for transformation and clear-minded change. And I think what's happened with the killing of George Floyd and all of the other horrible things that have happened going back hundreds of years, that there is going to be a culmination and a reckoning. And it's going to be positive. And there will be some more pain and trouble, but I think there's going to be positive results. And some of the words that came up from your suggestion to think about, were for me was transformational, palliative, clear-minded cultural evolution, forgiveness, recovery, and rest. I know that I follow what's going on with Penumbra Theater in St. Paul, and they're using a huge amount of foundation money to build health and healing, whether it's massage or meditation or counseling, trauma-informed care, whatever. That is so great and so needed across the board. So I just wanted to share with you, I have connections to the University of Minnesota. I graduated social work, MSW there. Know a lot of what CASCW has been up to. And then I went on to law school, and now I'm retired. So, and eventually I'll be back in Minnesota, because I do think it's a great place, and regardless of how cold it is up there. So thank you for this great session, and I'll sign off.
I appreciate that. Appreciate your imagination to, remind us that, we actually could be on the right track in spite of all the bad things going on. There are people on the right track. Any other thoughts before we move on to our own writing of any other things that we're thinking about? Thank you all for hanging out on a Wednesday to talk about poetics and imagination and the use of language in this moment that we find ourselves in. Any other thoughts before?
I can share quick something, Kino.
Yeah.
I think in our session, we talked about what our voices being at stake, and the power of voices, and then shifting in the power of youth voices, and then connected to all of this conversation on what more can unfold and be undone in the next week and beyond with this election. But I think too, like thinking of, and I know a lot of folks on this call are in or have been or intersect with child welfare and youth who are involved in child welfare, and just how often, in my experience as a youth worker and worker supporting youth, as a social worker in child welfare, like so often, too often, youth feel like disenfranchised in that way, right? Like they're not included in this, in anything, you know, like they're lucky if their voices are like at the table, or they're lucky if someone recognizes the power in their voice. And so just like the parallels or like the simultaneous movement of all of that when we're thinking of youth, and that like whatever, you know, whether we're talking about elections and disenfranchisement and what voices are at the table or not, or, you know, and also thinking of these systems and these youth, these young people, and then also thinking of like how we're talking and seeing, you know, more about reimagining and abolishing and reform, you know, whatever, all these different words or ways about going about change, and just the constant, like we have to remember to have youth and those youth voices at the forefront of that, especially when we're talking about, you know, programs or systems that are you know, serving them, or, you know, and so I think that just is where I was leaving off from our session, is just that constant reminder of like the power of those voices, and that's at stake. Like that feels at stake to me. Like how do we continue to center their voices, and to me that's like where all the creativity is, and that's where all the reimagine, you know, like that I just am always so moved by what our young people, and I know I'm technically still a young person too, but I'm just saying, you know, like even younger people who are just, I'm like, man, that's incredible. And like, how do we use our different privilege, our platforms, our resources to uplift that, to push that to the forefront in any way, you know? And I think that's whether you're a county tribal worker, whether you're a youth worker in a community agency, whether it's empowering your niece or nephew, like there's so many ways we can do that. And so I just wanted to bring that in.
Yeah, appreciate that. And if we could even just take a moment and think about, has a young person come to us in our work, you know, in child welfare with a grievance, right? And did that young person feel supported, you know, in coming to us, you know, a grievance with how they were listened to or how they're being treated, right? You know, and thinking about these are the things, that evidence that let us know how our systems are working, you know, how young people's testimony comes into our day-to-day working lives. And I think that is a good segue to something I would, hopefully we have time to watch. So poem by a poet, Dante Collins, who won the most promising young poet award, I think in 2017. He's also my little brother. I would love, and we all went through the Hennepin County foster care system. I would love if we could just watch this brief poem as a sort of a wrap-up thing, and soak in the language that he's describing. And I'm going to do the share screen. Hopefully this works. I'm new to this sort of Zoom, but we're gonna see. Hopefully this works. Okay. Share screen, share. Cool. Boom. I think this is gonna work. Dante Collins, can y'all see it?
Yeah.
You ask for a beginning. I speak to you of a ship, sailing my blood. There was a continent mistook for a country, mistook for a cake, and then a feast. Ghost, white hands licking brown bodies from their fingers. Auction, swelter, fade to black. And then my birth. A red ocean coughs up a kicking boy, and then the ocean recedes. You ask for more specific biology. I speak of wind, of invisible blood, moonlit flight of a boy floating from hospital to foster home to foster home to foster home, until finally a woman picks the boy made entirely of sand. My name is Dante Collins, and I am a poet. I was adopted into a family of 9. I am always seeking to kind of belong, not from a place of like deficit, but from a place of who can I welcome into the family of me, or how many families or homes can I have? So in thinking of home and place and what inspires my language landscape, or what inspires my bravery or my nerve to write and perform, I think Sacred Thing was a place that my heart kept going back to. A lot of times, like my audience when I write, yeah, it's my younger self, but specifically the younger self in this space. Like the lunch table kids at lunch, we'd often like rap battle, and we made language work for us. It's what spoken word and poetry does for me. It calls me one into myself. It says like, well, what do you know about words? What do you know about rhythm and sound and song? And what can you make? Like, what can you make? What you have to say? And I love that. Look at the moon making sugar of its light, and look at each hair of grass naming themselves, and sure, I exist like a gust of wind, the luck of some slow erasure, sure, the orphan mothers his own tongue, sure, I am here, like everything's busy child, like a handprint left in the sand.
Cool. All right, y'all. Okay, how do I bring it back? Cool. Figure out how to. Cool. Yeah, so let's I would love to just just if it's even in the chat, what are just some thoughts, some noticings that there we go. Okay. Yeah, what are some thoughts, some noticings as we sort of come to a point of reflection and close out, and you know, thank you all so much for participating in this session. What are some sort of things that resonated from Dante Collins speaking about home and placemaking that resonated? You know, speaking about foster care, you know, any sort of noticings, belonging, absolutely. How many homes can I have? Absolutely. I thought that was very interesting, right? Why not have many homes, right? In the sense of places and community where we belong, right? Absolutely. And I'll share the link to that video and the link to the Vincent Hardy as well as a follow-up. Any quick sort of things that folks want to share? For you to jump in, noticings.
I think you talked a lot about being positive. So I saw it as a very just like forward-thinking message, and saying like, hey, all this stuff happened. I had to transition in a lot of different ways, but I really liked some of the positive spin that he had, especially as just describing what happened.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else? Absolutely.
I mean, I just feel like there's a lot that's been really profound in this conversation, especially thinking about like the components of the election, but then also the our role working with young people. In my small breakout group, we talked about like the imagination of young people and how it's so inspiring, and it made me think about how as an adult, like what are the ways that I like hem that in, or limit it or boundary it, you know, and keep it from achieving and just thriving. You know, and when I think about that in electoral politics, I think about like Ricardo Levins Morales talks about like sun spaces and moon spaces, and like the like electoral politics is a moon space, but the people, the movement is like on the ground, that's the sun. So like the moon just reflects back the light, you know, but the power is in the sun and it is in the people. And it makes me think about myself as a youth worker and how young people are the sun and I'm the moon. And like I need to not get confused and think that I have that like the power is coming from me, you know. So just trying to like, there's some stuff in that I'm just gonna take away from this conversation. And I think that Dante Collins's poem just brought all that home. It brought all that home and makes me curious to learn more about him and his work. So thank you. So many good connections here.
Thank you. Yeah, he has a wonderful book. Autopsy is his poetry book. He's working on others as well. Yeah, appreciate that. Spaces where young people feel affirmed and confident to lead, particularly in this moment. Appreciate that. Anything else that stuck out? Well, thank you all so much. I mean, I think that there's a lot of follow-up conversations we could have. I think there's a lot of resources out there that ties directly into what we've been talking about. You know, please check out, you know, Dante Collins' work, the book that I mentioned earlier by Jason Stanley, How Fascism Works. We talked about Vincent Hardy and his imagination for a more just country. We talked about Social Poetics by Mark Nowak that covers a lot of stuff that came out, I think, in 2018, maybe 2019. Is there any other sort of things that people are thinking about? Oh yeah, check out these incredible organizations, MPD 150, Reclaim the Black Visions, Black Table Arts, of course, is doing work on the ground, gathering artists to think about democratic projects and the role of art in sustaining that imagination. Yeah, I appreciate you all taking time to talk about the role of social poetics in this moment and how it relates to young people and keeping their imaginations affirmed. Yeah, thank you all for having the time to talk about these themes and these topics, you know. Yeah, is there any other sort of questions or things people are thinking about as we sort of wrap up here? Karina, do you have any?
Kino, can you repeat the name of Dante's book title?
Yep, Autopsy. Yeah. And you could, I believe you could find it on Button Poetry and you could find it on his website and
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, well, one, thank you, Kino, for such a great session. And I think pushing all of us to like engage and have conversation and reflect. I really appreciated that today. And I will follow up with an email to everyone and gather as many of these great suggestions and resources and include it in the email for you all. So keep an eye out, and for folks who are needing CEUs, I'll attach that as well. And of course, you can always email Cashew with other questions. But thank you again, Kino. We really appreciate your time and just all the work you're doing in community always.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. All right, y'all.
Yeah. We'll let everyone log off. Have a good rest of your day.